Well, here we are, back in St Austell. We're joined now by David Haigh. And David is a human rights lawyer who spent many years living in the Middle East. But far more important than that to this crowd, he's a Cornish parish councillor living in Penzance. David, let's begin with Cornwall. You know, I have noticed over the years that I've been travelling down here, I do see a lot more Cornish flags. And I hear people saying to me, they talk about England, by which they mean over the Tamar, that funny lot that live over the Tamar. But people really do. And now, you know, I think only about 3% of Cornwall are genuine Cornish separatists. But the important point is that, you know, we've now got this unitary council in Cornwall with some degree of devolved powers. There's even talk of a mayor, perhaps. I mean, is devolution... I was in Wales last night, where it seems to me devolution is actually working out rather badly. Is there a real demand for devolution down here?
I think certainly there's a campaign. There was always a campaign. I think it was 10 years ago that the Cornish were granted, protected nation status by Europe, as I'm sure you're familiar with. But you know, what has been done with that since? So you know, I think everyone's very. You know, I mean, I wasn't born here, so I'll never be classed as proper Cornish. I mean, I think you need to be generations to do that. But I went to school here, and I think there's definitely a national, you know, an identity here.
Well, you went to language. School here. You live
a language, a flag.
And you're still not Cornish.
No, I never.
Gosh.
No,
it's a very high bar.
No, it's a very, very high bar. But you know, I think we need to use that, the national identity that we've got, and actually do something with it. And what's been done in the last 10 years? Not very much. You know, if you live down here, which a lot of my friends that I went to school with are here, many problems. You know, whether it's, you mentioned earlier, whether it's housing, the second homes, things like that, causing problems, jobs, investment. There's so many more important things than whether or not we want to be an independent nation, as it were, I think.
But nothing wrong with the Cornish flag.
Great flag.
Nothing wrong with being proud of the county. And it is a very beautiful county. And that's the problem, isn't it? It's got this amazing landscape and seascape, and it's attractive for all sorts of outdoor pursuits. And as London, in the last few decades, has got relatively so much richer than the rest of the country, people have come here on holiday. Oh, I'd rather like that house. I could buy that for a holiday home, or we could just spend a few weeks a year here. And you understand why people would do that.
Yeah.
You know, the kids want to go surfing, or they want to, you know, walk the Cornish cliff path, whatever it may be. Now, you were saying to me before we came on air that you were living in Lamorna, where the place was literally like a morgue in the winter. Well,
that's the thing, is it's a blessing and a curse. You know, I mean, the beauty is we all live here. We have a lot of people coming in for tourists. But, you know, I lived in a little place called Lamorna, a very, very picturesque fishing village. And one lady died, and literally one of my neighbours died, and all the cottages, every single one on the seafront, was either a second home or a holiday let. And then that you know, in the summer it's fine. I mean, you don't know who your neighbours are, but it keeps changing. But then in the winter, it's a ghost town. The local pub closes, the garage, the shops, the schools. Then you don't have children. The community dies. But then how do you resolve that? Because it's an impossible...
It's very difficult. Well, there's good and bad everywhere. Now, I went out this afternoon, earlier, into Mevagissey, and produced this little film talking about a couple of these issues, including housing, and it's very relevant to what we've just discussed. There we are, traditional Cornish pasty, which is great here in Mevagissey in the rain. Trouble is, even here, that shop was card only. What is going on? Don't kill cash. So Mevagissey was really made on the back of the Cornish pilchard, or we call it the sardine today. But the fishing industry here now has had a real boom, a real boost. You can see some fishing boats behind me, but a lot of them are out right now, and guess what they're after? Tuna. Blue fin tuna. Last 10 years in a row, huge numbers of tuna coming into these waters, giving a lot of jobs for local people, anglers coming down, paying to catch, tag and release them. But for the first time since we left the European Union, we've now got a commercial licence. And the fish you're seeing now in these pictures were landed here in Mevagissey just yesterday. The tuna boom is really good news for Cornwall. Well, look at it. It's beautiful, isn't it? The houses are great, but there's a problem. It's happening all over Cornwall. Rich Londoners look at these properties and think, I'd love to have one of those as my holiday home, meaning that for locals to live here becomes really, well, not just difficult, frankly impossible. One thing Mevagissey has got right is behind the village, up on the hill, they built a whole load of new housing, affordable housing for local people only. And that means you come to this harbour, you come to this village and its pubs in the winter and its shops, and there's still a sense of real Cornish community. Unlike Padstow, which in the winter is now literally devoid of anybody. And it's a real challenge for local councils everywhere. How do you deal with the influx of money? You want the money during the tourist season, but you also need somewhere for local people to live. So there are two answers to this, David, I think. One is that you double people's council tax, which may be happening from next year, or you quadruple council tax on second homes. But the other approach is the Mevagissey approach, where you build housing and you say only local people can buy these houses. Shouldn't this new unitary authority here in Cornwall be doing a bit more of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, what's happening at the moment isn't working. You know, when I look at the friends that I went to school with, you know, I've even got friends and living in bell tents in their parents' gardens because they can't afford either rents, which are extremely expensive now, or a house. So something needs to be done, and it's not being done, and that's the issue. And we also need to see, you know, we need to increase the wages of people in Cornwall, as well as make the houses more available and cheaper, but we need to bring investment into Cornwall so the wages of the people go up as well. You know, and those are things that are not being done, and they do need to be done.
No, there's a lot needs to be done.
Yeah.
The tuna boom is good news.
Yeah.
A Brexit benefit. We weren't allowed to catch tuna as members of the European Union. Now we are. And our commercial quota at this stage is very small compared to the French and Spanish, but it is certainly out of season. Very good news for Cornwall. David, you lived for 10 years in the Middle East. You've got friends on the Israeli side of the conflict, friends on the other side of the conflict. Where do you think we go from here?
Yeah, it really is one of those impossible situations. I mean, what happened, you know, in Israel a couple of weeks ago is absolutely terrible. You know, and Hamas are terrorists. I'm not the BBC. I'm more than happy to say it.
The BBC wouldn't say that.
So they, you know, but you know, it's a problem because, you know, like you said, I mean, I trained at a Jewish law firm and I lived in the Middle East for 10 years. So I've seen both sides, and there are arguments on both sides. Terrorism is never acceptable. Loss of civilian life is never acceptable. How do we resolve it? And that's the problem. And you've got so many others, you know better than the players in either side, and proxy wars going on. I think, you know, it's a very difficult situation for us all in the world now. We need to watch very carefully.
I just sense, as I said earlier, that as the casualties mount in Gaza, the international support for Israel will and we're seeing it already. You know, calls for ceasefires. It's beginning to diminish. I just feel that Israel's going to find itself in a very tough position. But then they're surrounded by people, I mean, Hamas being one of them, that literally want to wipe them off the face of the earth.
Well, absolutely, but you've got this new dynamic now. You've got other countries that have normalised relations. You've seen Arab countries normalise relations with Israel, which we didn't have before. So, you know, is that actually we're going to see something different because of that? I mean, but like I said, yeah.
I have to say, I think one of the reasons for the Iranian-sponsored Hamas attack is because of the success of the UAE and Israel normalising relations. You know, tourism, trade, investment, Saudi Arabia about to join. I think this was deliberately done.
I agree, yeah.
I think to break this up. David, a final point. When I came out in the summer, as it were, as being debanked, lots of other people said, well, we've been debanked too. And then I found it had happened to a vast number of people. You too have been debanked.
No, I haven't. And before, you know, because it was almost like a dirty little secret until you came out, because you didn't tell anybody.
Yeah, because you see, I don't care. I just say what I...
I'm
unembarrassable.
I mean, I had my accounts closed for a connection to a Middle Eastern princess that I helped. And you know, at the time, you don't want to talk about it because it does seem like a dirty little secret. But then you've made it now something that we can all talk about. So we can all come out as debanked. So thank you for that.
Well, I'll go on with the campaign.